The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "As it was in Noah's day, so will it be when the Son of Man comes. For in those days before the flood, people were eating, drinking, taking wives, taking husbands, right up until the day Noah went into the ark. And they suspected nothing till the flood came and swept all away. It will be like this when the Son of Man comes. Then of two men in the fields, one is taken, one left. Of two women at the millstone grinding, one is taken, one left. So stay awake, because you do not know when the Master is coming." You may be quite sure of this, that if the householder had known at what time of the night the burglar would come, he would have stayed awake and would not have let anyone break through the wall of his house. Therefore you too must stand ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. That's the gospel. It's the good news of the Lord. Do you know what the gospel we just read reminded me of? Back in 2004, a hurricane struck the island of Grenada in the West Indies. I had lived there for 3 years, but I wasn't on the island when the hurricane struck. But I was back on the island about 3 days later and was shocked and appalled by the devastation that I beheld there. But I remember Vincent, Bishop of the island, Vincent Darius, and he lived in a house in St. George's just overlooking the harbour. And he described for me the experience the morning after the hurricane, because it came through the night. And he stood out there the following morning on the veranda of his house overlooking the harbour. And he said his heart sank, that he never saw so much devastation in all his life. The boats and the yachts in the harbour had all been blown out of the harbour onto the land. The nutmeg trees, Grenada, as you know, famous for its nutmeg and spices, the hillsides stripped of the nutmeg, and they were just left with, looked like toothpicks sticking out of the earth all along the mountainside. Houses, the wooden houses, reduced to debris. The concrete houses, many of them without roofs. He said it was the most shocking experience he had. He was totally traumatized by the devastation he saw around him. And he said he stood there a long time looking out onto the harbour. And then he saw it. He saw a large fishing boat making its way round the headland. And it had the flag of Grenada and it had the flag of Trinidad side by side. And as that large fishing boat came closer, he saw that it was laden with food supplies and medical supplies and tarpaulins and coverings and so on. And he said his heart gave a lift. And he said he knew somewhere in the midst of all of that terrible devastation, he knew that Grenada would be okay. That Grenada had good friends. Grenada had good neighbors. And that Grenada would rise again one day from the debris. And sure enough, over the days and weeks that followed, and I was there to witness it, it wasn't only fishing boats, large fishing boats that were coming into harbour, huge container ships coming from all over the States and Britain and various parts of the world, people coming to the rescue of the people of Grenada. Reminded me of the gospel because Jesus spoke about the day when the flood came and swept everything away. And just as suddenly and unexpectedly, what happened? The Son of Man coming. The big fishing boat coming in from Trinidad. A sign that they were not forgotten. That help was on the way. That deliverance was at hand. Even though it were to take months and even years before Grenada made back, still in the midst of that terrible trauma of hurricane, that sign of hope that the Son of Man was there in the goodness and in the kindness and in the love of the people of Grenada and other neighbours and friends. The people of Grenada experienced the presence of God and the love of God at work, restoring them once more. There's no doubt the storms come the way of all of us in life. It's part and parcel, isn't it, of what it is to be human. We all know the terror of the storm in our lives, and no doubt there are people in this church this morning who are in the midst of that just now. And yes, it's a little bit like Jesus says in the gospel, it came on us suddenly and unexpectedly. Our lives plunged into crisis. We were eating and drinking, taking wives, taking husbands, doing all the good and beautiful things in life. And then suddenly, everything coming crashing down around us. The loss of someone dear to us, or the news broken to us that someone close to us with terminal illness. The experiences of failure in our lives, or rejection, and it was like the flood, sweeping everything away. Our lives the ground swept from under us. We all know that place. And Jesus in the gospel is saying to us that God is in that place too. A little bit of God is there. Just as the woman knows there's new life within her womb, a little embryo of life. She knows that's within her. So too the person of faith knows that something, a little bit of God's presence already there in the moments of crisis. And just as the pregnant woman waits for that new life within her womb to unfold and to grow and to develop and to manifest itself, so too, as followers of Jesus, we are a people who wait in trust, who wait in hope, who wait with confidence for that little presence of God that we can't see, that we can't feel when we're in the throes of the crisis, but we trust and we know that God is there somewhere. And we wait for that presence of God and that love of God to show itself, and for God to make himself more manifest and to come to save us. Jesus in the gospel reassuring us that just as the crisis comes suddenly and unexpectedly, so too the Son of Man, that presence of God coming suddenly and unexpectedly in people, in friends, in neighbors, in the community, in all people of goodwill, coming to save us and to rescue us from that time of crisis. And you know, it's not easy to wait in the storm. It's very painful. It's painful when our hearts are plagued with fears and anxieties of all kinds as we wait for God to come to us and to show himself to us. And our hearts cry out, "How long, O Lord? How long do I have to wait for you to come? How long do I have to wait for you to come to save me? How long do I have to wait for you to come to save me from this sickness that is threatening me? How long do I have to wait for you to come to liberate me from this addiction and this affliction in my life? How long, O Lord, do I have to wait for you to come and restore that relationship that was so much part of my life and that has left me bereft? How long do I have to wait for justice to come in the various situations in my life? How long do I have to wait for those values of Jesus like fraternity and solidarity and compassion to become enshrined in the political and social economic structures in our country and in our world? How long, O Lord, do we have to wait for that dream of Jesus for harmony in relations between different people of different cultures and religions and traditions? How long, O Lord, do we have to wait? And it's painful. And the gospel saying to us today, stay awake. Why? Because the new life is in the womb. The embryo is already there. Stay awake in trust that God is with us and that presence of God is going to unfold and to grow and to become more and more manifest, and that we will experience the Son of God coming into our lives and into our world in the fullest possible way. That's what it is to be an Advent people. A people who know how to wait with trust, with hope, with confidence in our hearts. And it's not we wait and sit back and do nothing. No, because we know the embryo's in the womb. What's the mother already doing? She's cherishing that new life in the womb. That new life in the womb is determining her lifestyle, how she eats, how she drinks, when she rests, what she does, what she doesn't do. And it's because we're a people who wait in hope that we're already active and engaged in preparing the way for that new life to come into our lives and into our world. In Advent, we stand in solidarity with all our brothers and sisters who are waiting for the Son of Man to come and to show himself, God's presence, reassuring our brothers and sisters that they're not alone, that God is with us, that God is at work in our lives and our world, and that someday God's salvation, we will experience it to the full. We can look around us in the world today. It's very easy to be disheartened and disillusioned, isn't it? The presence of so much violence and war, Syria, Aleppo, Sierra Leone, different parts of the world. So much disease and sickness continuing to destroy innocent human life. So many children continuing to suffer terminal diseases. So much racism taking hold of our world. Xenophobia, homophobia. How these, in some places, becoming normalized. And we look around us and we say, this is how it is, this is how it's always been, nothing's going to change. And we say no, as followers of Jesus Christ. We believe it can be and it will be different. Why? Because the child is already in the womb. A little bit of God's presence, goodness and love very much there in human life, and that goodness and love is one day going to triumph. Goodness and love will one day be victorious in our lives and in our world. Indeed, we are convinced that goodness is already winning out over evil, that love is conquering hatred, and that light is dispelling the darkness. So we, during this season of Advent, renew our commitment to wait and to work with joyful hope in our hearts for that dream of Jesus, for the seeds of the kingdom that are already there in our world, to put down roots and shoots, and that we'd experience more and more God's presence among us. Do you know, I think the whole spirituality of Advent, beautifully captured, it's sometimes spoken of as a Christmas carol, but really it's an Advent hymn. And I think it captures the whole mood, this waiting that we're invited to enter into for the Son of Man to come. I'm not going to sing it for you. You'll be relieved. But I will share the words with you because the words are very deep and very beautiful. A ray of hope flickers in the sky. A tiny star lights up way up high. And all across the land dawns a brand new morn. This comes to pass when a child is born. A silent wish sails the seven seas. The winds of change whisper in the trees. And the walls of doubt tumble tossed and torn. And this comes to pass when a child is born. A rosy hue settles all around. It must come true sometime soon, somehow. For a spell or two, no one seems forlorn. And this comes to pass when a child is born. And all of this happens because the world is waiting for one child. Black, white, yellow, no one knows. But a child that will grow up and turn tears to laughter, hate to love, war to peace, and everyone to everyone's neighbor. And misery and suffering will be words to be forgotten forever. It's all a dream, an illusion now. It must come true. Sometime soon, somehow. That all across the land, a brand new day is born. This comes to pass when a child is born. Amen.